Speaking of Elon Musk, and if you feel you've heard too much from and about him already, I sympathise with you. Honestly, I do. But today's Times reports something very big happening. The leaders of France, Germany, Norway, and in Brussels, and also, of course, yesterday, Keir Starmer, the way they've turned on the tech billionaire and trying to slap down his attempts to intervene in democratic politics on this side of the Atlantic from his online perch in the United States. I want to get the thoughts of Nina Dos Santos, a European journalist and commentator, back with us in the studio. Welcome to you, Nina.
Thank you, John.
And Kate McCann is with us, our political editor on Times Radio. Hello, Kate.
Hello.
Good to see you too. Nina, can I start with you? The leaders of Europe biting back in this way. I know you've been making a bit of a study of what's going on. What can you tell us about this and the way they seem to see a distinct need to confront what they see as a danger?
Well, we've already seen a few of them decide to do that. Obviously, Emmanuel Macron has used Elon Musk's own platform, X, to say that it's, quote, inconceivable, more or less, to think that somebody who's the richest person in the world should be using that platform to, as he points out, quote unquote, undermine democracy. But the problem here is that he doesn't actually spell Elon Musk out by name. They're all a little bit too nervous to do that. We've had the Prime Minister of Norway, who runs a minority government that's coming up for election later on this year. He's been a little bit more vociferous in his criticism of Elon Musk, saying that he, shouldn't be using this platform to interfere in democratic processes in Europe and that it's deeply worrying. But really, what has focused minds in Brussels today is the fact that Elon Musk is going to be hosting his own interview with the head of the AfD party, Alice Weidel, on his own platform X. And that means that many of the power base in Brussels are starting to think about how they can now draft some kind of last-minute legislation to try and rein in Musk on an EU-wide level.
Just for those who haven't followed this closely, the AfD is the German party, which it's been described as a neo-fascist party. Is that fair? Described as being apologists for the German Nazi party and seeking a rapprochement with Putin. Is that a fair description?
Well, certain elements of it, yes. It's done quite well in recent elections in the eastern part of Germany, which is where its power base is. But that's spreading. And if you look at the polls at the moment, John, because Germany's going to elections on February the 23rd, the AfD could come in second position. It could hoover up more than 20, maybe up to 30% of the vote. And they've got a real problem there, the other mainstream German parties, because even if the conservative CDU and CSU party, that's the one now run by Friedrich Merz, which used to be run by Angela Merkel, even if they get the lion's share of the votes, they won't get an absolute majority and they'll have to govern with somebody. But the other parties will try and beef out and form some kind of ring fence around the AfD to not govern with them. And here is Elon Musk saying, well, forget about the proper organs of democracy like the Bundestag. You can just have it out on X, on Twitter. And that's essentially what he's doing with his platform here.
All right, Kate McCann. So these European leaders having a bite back at Elon Musk. There's a certain common thread here, going after him without naming him. I mean, this is not Harry Potter, but I'm reminded of Lord Voldemort. He's the figure whose name dare not be spoken.
Yeah.
And yesterday we saw, didn't we, some of your thoughts about Keir Starmer and the way that he and his ministers would seem to be trying to tread this narrow, delicate path between confronting Musk without over-escalating.
Yeah, and I think that's been the strategy of Downing Street throughout this, actually, over the last couple of weeks. And it's fair to say that Keir Starmer, he doesn't want to get into a head-on collision with Elon Musk on X or anywhere else. And so that's the reason why, when he was asked about it at a press conference, he deliberately didn't use Elon Musk's name. He sought to try and broaden out his point to talk about politics and social media and the way we conduct debate more broadly. And Number 10 is sticking to that approach. We've been asking them questions today, and they've been saying, really the strategy for them is to make sure that people understand the truth of the situation when it comes to the Alexis J inquiry, that people understand that Keir Starmer's role as Director of Public Prosecutions, what he did and didn't do, and to really try and sift out some of the misinformation which is happening online. I think the problem is that there is now a real appetite for this inquiry and investigation, and that parties like the Conservatives and Reform are both also backing that. And so it's very difficult for Keir Starmer to shut that down, because it looks like he doesn't want to investigate it. It looks like he's closing the debate, and that fuels this idea that there's some kind of conspiracy going on.
I should say on one side of the argument, there are very strong voices on the other side that say we've had lots of inquiries. There's grounds there, evidence there, data there, a basis there for action by the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, the courts, juries and judges. But that's the argument we're looking at on the programme today. Give me an idea, a sense of the views of Labour MPs and ministers that you talk to all the time about this approach, do they want to see something a bit more full frontal?
Yeah, I think some of them are really uncomfortable about it, especially the MPs who have constituencies in the north of the country for whom, they are hearing from their constituents on a regular basis that they are worried about. A lot of these instances happened in places like Manchester, Oldham, Rochdale, Rotherham, areas where people still have questions about, well, who knew in the community? And John, I know this is something you're looking at, and it's what gets to the heart of why we are hearing this demand for an inquiry. The Alexis J report looked at reports of this kind of behaviour in certain towns, but it wasn't the entire focus of the J report. And in fact, Alexis J herself said, very difficult to estimate how many young girls have been affected, impossible to do without a wider inquiry. Now, she is right. Important to say, she herself has said, we don't need any more investigation into this. We know it happened. That's not answering the same question, though. The question lots of people are asking is, who knew about it in councils? Who knew about it in police forces? Who knew about it as teachers? And why did they not get held to account after the fact in these communities? Are they still teaching, protecting, looking after my children? And therefore, do I feel comfortable about it? The government is introducing a mandatory reporting stipulation, so anybody in a position of public power would be obligated to report their suspicions of child abuse, but it won't, we expect, be retrospective. So it won't then look at what happened in the past. It will only be active in the future, and I think that's where this tension is now.
Yeah, it's worth adding that Alexis J also made the point that her inquiry was not a comprehensive study into all of the allegations that were in the air in this or that area. It was a cross-section looking at the systemic nature of this problem with the hope of providing systemic answers to it. Sticking, if I may, with Elon Musk for a moment, Kate, with you. Nigel Farage. Now there he is in the Times. He's been around the media, certainly on his own favourite platforms, making a point of putting a distance now between himself and his party and Elon Musk. It's a very conscious effort, this. We were sitting with Tim Montgomery yesterday when he was talking about, he was arguing for not taking Musk's millions. And Farage was even saying, look, I'd rather, he argued, have my independence than those millions. It's an interesting position.
It is, and it was fascinating to hear Tim Montgomery also suggesting that Elon Musk behind the scenes regrets being quite so vocal in his condemnation of Nigel Farage.
Yeah, Nina, on this question of democracy and the perceived challenge to the way of doing things democratically in Europe, not just in this country. Here is Elon Musk, who these leaders are going for him without naming him. If the threat is that significant, is that severe, and they're all speaking out in the same way, they must think there's a big problem. They can't just carry on like that.
No, because there's a pattern of behaviour with Elon Musk, and I'm not surprised that he's focusing on the issue of grooming, because remember that in the United States, that is a big area of sort of conspiracy theories. Remember the so-called famous Pizzagate scandal?
Of course,
yeah, where there was this false conspiracy theory that suggested that there was some paedophilic cabal in Washington, which wasn't true. This is one of the reasons why I think he's going for this area.
Nina DeSantos, Kate McCann, thank you so much for your thoughts this afternoon.